Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
Good Tuesday morning on this July 21st. It's Vanessa Denha-Garmo filling in for Teresa Tomeo this morning. Happy to be with all of you here today. She will be back in our host chair tomorrow. Just filling in for a day for dear TT. She'll come back and share with you all the updates about her latest wonderful book about Italy and St. Francis of Assisi and pilgrimages she has coming up now back in the States. So excited to chat with TT myself. Bill Donahue will be with us here today, the Catholic League, and we'll be talking about Senator Lindsey Graham here today. Senator Lindsey Graham was an astute advocate of traditional moral values, in defense of the rights of the unborn, marriage properly understood, and religious liberty endeared him to people across the faith lines. So Catholic League is penning some commentary about Lindsey Graham, and Bill Donahue will be with us here today to give us his insights on Senator Lindsey Graham. Morera Johnson, CatholicMom.com. We'll talk about the dog days of summer. We're halfway through this summer, and for some, maybe more than halfway. Some schools start in August here in the Michigan area. But we'll talk about keeping kids active, happy, and connected to faith. What can we do with our kids during this summer? I know when my daughter was young, we'd always come up with school activities. We did like a work pack. We'll talk with her about that. We did work pack for like 15, 20 minutes. So she did not, be part of that summer slide where kids lose a lot of that learning and are behind when they enter the next school year. And then we found some fun activities throughout the day. So I'm looking forward to Maria talking with her today, because it's not always easy to keep your kids active in the summer if you don't have access to like a pool or a beach or, slip and slides or whatever it may be. So we'll talk with her about that. Kelly Salomon will be with us here today from the Newman Guide News. There's a ton of topics that Kelly shared with us here today, and on educating students with intellectual and developmental disabilities in Catholic schools. JP Catholic celebrates blessing and dedication of creative arts complex. Holy Apostles freezes undergraduate tuition, Holy Apostles College and Seminary. And then an op-ed on New York unions are telling on themselves by opposing school choice tax credit. A Nebraska man arrested over the threat to shoot up Catholic schools. So a lot to talk with Kelly Salomon here today from the Newman Guide News. She's always joins Teresa here on Catholic Connection. And then I'll share some coaches' commentary in the EWTN Radio Extra Hour about how we show up every day. As from a coach's perspective, I'm a certified life and leadership coach and work in the area of creating culture and team building and our career development and helping managers move into executive roles. And I do that from a faith perspective for those who want a more Christian Catholic approach to their leadership. But we'll talk about how we show up every day and everything that we do. How we show up to work, how we show up to our families, how we show up to ministry, how we show up when we evangelize. What does that look like and how that creates culture? So that'll be my coach's commentary today. And then Sean Corcoran, I think that's how to pronounce it. I apologize if I got that wrong. We'll talk about how the group Men of Life support life and men affected by abortion. So Sean will be joining us in our EWTN Radio Extra Hour. Men for Life is a national pro-life organization whose mission is to change the culture by restoring biblical masculinity, equipping men to speak boldly and stand confidently for life, family, and faith. So we'll be talking with Sean here today on Catholic Connection. It is approaching 5 minutes past the hour here on Catholic Connection, and now it's time for the news on EWTN. And we will kick off this news update with a weather update from Tammy Trio.
The big weather story is Tropical Storm Bertha in the southeast. Storm warnings stretch from the Florida Panhandle westward into southeastern Louisiana. Expect heavy rain, gusty winds, rough surf, and dangerous rip currents, along with the threat of flash flooding from the Florida Panhandle through coastal Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. The Northeast will enjoy a pleasant sunny day with highs ranging from near 80 in Boston to 86 in Philadelphia, while the temperatures in the Midwest will hit 90 degrees, along with scattered thunderstorms capable of gusty winds and heavy downpours. Temperatures are climbing into the low 100s across the Plain States, with strong thunderstorms a possibility. The Southwest remains dangerously hot, with Phoenix hitting a high of 112. Monsoonal thunderstorms could develop over Arizona and New Mexico. Along the West Coast, sunny and hot. Temperatures hitting in the 90s to the low 100s throughout California. And mostly sunny in the Northwest, with temperatures in the 70s to the low 80s. That's your national forecast. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
EWTN News reports Bishop John Oberis of the Diocese of Rockville Center and 4 communities of religious sisters have filed a lawsuit against New York's Attorney General and Commissioner of Health over a law they say would force them to participate in the process of physician-assisted suicide. The Diocese of Rockville Center, New York, and the religious communities, the Carmelite Sisters for the Aged and Infirm, the Dominican Sisters of Hawthorne, the Missionary Sisters of St. Benedict, and the Little Sisters of the Poor, provide care for elderly and terminally ill people and say their Catholic faith prohibits them from participation in the process in any way. Democratic New York Governor Kathy Hochul signed the bill legalizing physician-assisted suicide in February, and law goes into effect in August. Although some facilities can opt out of parts of the physician-assisted suicide process, the exemptions are limited, and the law imposes additional requirements on the diocese and religious communities. The sister of the late South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham will run for the full Senate term to replace him. Mark Mayfield has that story.
Senator Darlene Graham made the announcement during an interview with Fox News. This comes after she was selected by Governor Henry McMaster to serve out the remainder of her brother's term following his passing. South Carolina Republican Congressman Russell Fry, Attorney Duke Buckner, businessman Mark Lynch, and Congressman Ralph Norman are also vying for the Republican nomination. The state holds a special GOP primary on August 11th. I'm Mark Mayfield.
New York City Mayor Mandani is doubling down on comments made about possibly arresting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Lizzie Rodabali reports.
The Israeli leader is expected to visit the Big Apple in September for the UN General Assembly.
My administration will follow all applicable local laws. That is our commitment. That is something that we will follow through on. When it comes to an adherence to local law. And that's all I have to add on that.
It comes after a recent New York Times podcast interview where the mayor said Netanyahu belongs in The Hague. President Trump dismissed claims from Mamdani in a post on Truth Social saying Netanyahu will not be arrested while in the United States. Netanyahu called the ICC a kangaroo court with no jurisdiction over Israelis. In New York, I'm Lizzie Radabali.
President Trump is opposing additional 50% tariffs on certain Canadian goods over alleged trade discrimination. Mark Mayfield fills us all in.
The White House says Trump signed 3 proclamations on Monday that target certain Canadian imports with the tariffs as a response to the trade discrimination. The White House says Trump is leveling the playing field for crucial American exports that include motor vehicles, alcohol, and dairy. The Canadian products being targeted range from wine to hockey sticks. I'm Mark Mayfield.
Gas prices are creeping up again as the conflict between the U.S. and Iran heats up. Tammy Trio reports.
Traffic through the Strait of Hormuz appears to have slowed, sending the price of oil upward in the last few weeks. According to AAA, today's average price for a gallon of regular unleaded is a penny over $4 a gallon. That's up from $3.85 a week ago. Drivers in California are paying the most at $5.51 a gallon. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
A federal judge is signing off on what may be the largest class action settlement in the history of U.S. copyright law. Rory O'Neill reports.
As part of the settlement, Anthropic will pay $1.5 billion to authors and book publishers who sued over copyright infringement. A group of authors accused Anthropic of misusing their books to train its AI chatbot, Claude. The payments authorized by Monday's final court approval in San Francisco will come in $3,000 installments sent to the owners of 500,000 different published works. I'm Rory O'Neill.
Fairlife has halted its production of milk in the U.S. following a ransomware attack. Matt Manson has more.
Coca-Cola, which purchased Fairlife in 2020, said in a statement that the impacts of the incident are not yet known. The beverage giant added, however, that the breach has not affected product quality or safety. It's unclear when the breach occurred or when production will resume. I'm Matt Mattinson.
Matt Mattinson. Here's Mark Mayfield, with the latest technology news.
Thousands of Google employees are demanding more protection against layoffs. Daniel Martindale has the story.
About 4,500 Google employees have signed and delivered a petition to Google and Alphabet Incorporated CEO Sundar Pichai. Members of the Alphabet Workers Union delivered the petition on Google's Mountain View campus late last week. Union leaders say they had a productive meeting with one of Pichai's staff members. It comes with the tech market being radically reshaped by the emergence of AI technology. Google's rival companies like Oracle, Meta, and LinkedIn have laid off thousands of employees since 2022, citing AI.
The Trump administration is reportedly controlling access to the most advanced AI models. Sources tell CNBC that the White House is now vetting which companies can get access to the latest frontier models. The Trump administration insists the decision still rests with companies like Anthropic and OpenAI. And Google's parent company Alphabet and Tesla will report second quarter financial results on Wednesday. Intel is going to try and recapture its 2025 glow when it reports its earnings on Thursday. Tech Report, I'm Mark Mayfield.
Designed by God, guided by love, open to life. That is the theme of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, USCCB 2026 Natural Family Planning Awareness Week. The Bishops' annual NFP campaign, taking place July 19th to the 25th, highlights God's design for married love, the gift of life, and the Church's teaching on NFP methods. To educate people on the matter of NFP program of the USCCB develops a poster each year with supportive materials to be displayed in parishes, hospitals, NFP classrooms, marriage preparation sites, doctors' offices, family life centers, and campus ministry centers. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and his wife Usha announced the birth of their fourth child, a baby boy named Alec Neil Vance, on Sunday, July 19th. In a statement shared on social media, the couple wrote, "We are excited to announce that our baby boy, Alec Neil Vance, was born this morning. Usha and the baby are happy and healthy, and our kids are overjoyed to meet their little brother." The Vances are already parents to Evan, age 9, Vivek, age 6, and Maribel, age 4. EWTN News reports that Vance was received into the Catholic Church in 2019 and recently released a book about his faith journey titled Communion, Finding My Way Back to Faith. Again, we have guests joining us here on Catholic Connection. I'm Vanessa Denhagarmo, filling in for Teresa Tomeo. When we come back after the break, Bill Donahue, from the Catholic League, will be talking with us about Senator Lindsey Graham. Morera Johnson, CatholicMom.com, will be talking with us about the dog days of summer. Keeping kids active, happy, and connected to their faith. Not an easy task in the summer months to keep your kids constantly active. It is a challenge. I know this firsthand. And then, of course, Kelly Salomon, as she always joins Teresa, will be with us to talk with us about several stories, including on educating students with intellectual and developmental disabilities in Catholic schools. JP Catholic celebrates blessing and dedication of Creative Arts Complex, Holy Apostles freezes undergraduate tuition, and much more. We've got to take a break. When we come back, our first guest will be joining us, Bill Donahue from the Catholic League. Don't go away. Regular guest of EWTN and Catholic Connection, Bill Donahue joins us here today at the Catholic League. Senator Lindsey Graham passed away, and he's here to reflect on his life and the contribution he has made to this country. Thank you so much, as always. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, Bill. So tell us, you penned a wonderful piece in the Catholic League, and tell us about your perspective and what we're reflecting on regarding Senator Lindsey Graham.
Well, I think one of the Thank you for having me on. One of the things that really struck me most about Lindsey Graham is that if you paired him as a Protestant to the previous president who claimed to be a Catholic, you'll see that they had nothing in common when it came to marriage and the family and the life of the unborn. Biden took a very secular approach, very radical individual, and always worked to undermine what the Catholic Church teaches. Lindsey Graham is not a Catholic, but yet he stood firm for the life of the unborn. He was firm on marriage. He was firm on school choice, including funding for Catholic schools. He didn't have to take that extra step. So I think that, we're going to miss him. He was also a leader. He was a strong patriot. I'm a veteran. And we didn't address in the statement that I made his positions on foreign policy. It pretty much stuck to domestic. But let me just say, as a veteran, I appreciate the fact that we had a man who was a strong patriot defending this country, and he was a leader. He was a man of tremendous courage. What he did with Brett Kavanaugh will go down in history. Had it not been for Lindsey Graham, Brett Kavanaugh would not be on the Supreme Court, and we would not have a voice for religious liberty and for the life of the unborn and for marriage and the family. He stood up against the lies and the bullying of people on the left, and he won. So he was sorely, sorely missed.
And he took on a lot of things. He stood up and spoke out about a lot of things that he thought was unjust and unfair. And when New York State Democrats sought to force Chick-fil-A, for example, an evangelical-run company, to open its restaurants on Sunday along New York State Thruway, the South Carolina senator pushed back. You don't see a lot of senators taking stances on like this because it goes against what the culture speaks about.
Well, that's true. That speaks again to his courage, to his fortitude. Fortitude is one of the four cardinal virtues. And again, he was a Protestant, not a Catholic, but he stood up for Catholics and as well as for Christians of all denominations, and he was not afraid. Yeah, people were saying, "Wait a minute, why is this guy from South Carolina interested in what's going on in New York State in the throughways when they want to pass?" Because he knows where this goes. Okay?
All over the country.
Exactly. It's all over the country.
Yeah.
It's always a stepping stone with the left.
Yeah.
It's never. It's not the end line.
Yeah,
and he was smart enough to know it, and he checkmated them right away.
And, in 2024, you wrote about Graham again. This time, his pursuit of the notorious FBI spying programs that were launched against innocent Catholics. I mean, this was quite alarming. And I remember when it was being talked about, many people in the secular media were criticizing Christians and Catholics for speaking up against this, basically trying to silence Christians and Catholics, saying this is not happening, when in fact it was.
It was one of the most egregious violations of human rights in American history. That's how bad it was. It was not, as some people try to argue, that the FBI was spying on some radicals. It was spying on mainline Catholics. I picked up on this right away. They're not interested in some radicals. If they were, they would have just gone after them. They wouldn't care whether they were Catholic or Protestant or atheist. They would just simply go after them because they were a threat to this country. No, they were interested in mainline Catholics who were pro-life and who were in favor of traditional moral values. And it came out that way. So we're in a very dangerous situation where the FBI has been weaponized to go after mainline Catholics. And I wouldn't care if they're going after mainline Jews, Protestants, Hindus. It doesn't make any difference. The FBI should stick to what it's supposed to be doing and not going after people whom they called domestic terrorists. If you're pro-life and you're pro-marriage, pro-family, if you're against the LGBT community radical agenda, then somehow you're a domestic terrorist? No, worry about Antifa. Don't worry about Bill Donahue.
So, but let's talk about his seats open. I just was reporting in my newscast that his sister is going to run for his seat. Why is this? Obviously, you have to be in his state to be voting, but why is this important for us to be cognizant of this open seat, and who we vote for and how the seat gets filled?
Well, I think it's a mistake to think that he was just another senator. This man's one of the stalwarts. He's one of the champions. And the one way you can give a tribute to his legacy would be to put his sister in there. She has been involved in public service. It's not like as if she's working in an ice cream parlor. She's been involved in political life, so she's not a complete novice. But this would be a great tribute to Lindsey. And from what I know about her, which is not a great deal, admittedly, she is the kind of person who could certainly walk in and continue the great legacy of her brother.
Today we're talking with Bill Donahue, regular guest of EWTN, the Catholic League, Senator Lindsey Graham. What will you remember most? What should we remember most about Lindsey Graham? What else do you want us to understand about the impact he made in this country, not just in his state, but in the country?
Again, I go back to the fortitude, one of the great cardinal virtues. There are so many people, and I've had this conversation with Teresa and so many other people. It's not good enough. It's not good enough to have good intentions. You have to be able to act on the good intentions. So a lot of people I know, some in public life, some in private life, but private life you still can get involved. They do have the best of intentions, but they don't want to get involved because they're afraid of the blowback. Well, you know what? You've got to be able to stand up because the left, which is coming at us every single day with their radical secular agenda, they don't lack for courage. So we need more people like Lindsey Graham who are going to put up a big stop sign and saying, you're not going to go any further. We're going to take you on. And I think that's the thing that I remember more than any policy decision was the fact that he had the guts to do what his good intentions were driving him to do.
And sometimes, Bill, you need people like Lindsey Graham and you and the work that you're doing at the Catholic League to inspire people to have the courage to do the same, right? Sometimes we need to see the example of others doing it before us to give us the courage to do it ourselves.
Well, I couldn't agree more, and I'm very cognizant of that. I mean, look, you may have culture warriors like myself. We may be the generals out there. Generals don't win wars. You have to have troops. And the troops need the generals. We need each other. So if I can inspire people and we give out the email address of the person who's offended us, and then people contact that person, and that's how you change the culture. We have so many different examples that we've done over the years in the Catholic League. But you have to have the guts to get into the fray. The other side is, like I say, they're not afraid to take us on. But we have the numbers. They occupy the elite command centers. There's no question about it that the elites in this country tend to be more on the left than conservative. But the actual numbers of the people out there and the people in the pews, in the churches, they tend to be much more conservative. We just need to get a little bit more aggressive. I'm not asking people to become cultural warriors and get into the streets and all that. I'm simply saying you've got to write to your congressman. You've got to be able to participate. Let people know when they've offended you and get a little bit more vocal, and that's how you change the culture.
Bill, we have about a minute left with you here on Catholic Connection. What else do you want to share with our listeners about what's going on in the Catholic League?
Well, one of the things we're concerned about next is 9/11. It happens to be on a Friday. The Labor Day is on Monday the 7th, the same week. And I am very concerned as a veteran because we have a Muslim Marxist, Zoran Mandami, who's much more concerned about stereotyping Muslims than he is about condemning the people who bombed us on 9/11. And he's going to be presiding over the 9/11 ceremonies. So we are doing a report on what he and others have had to say about 9/11, what happened then. And we want to alert people to the fact that we're in a culture war here. And we have to stand with the American people and with the veterans and the people who are standing for what's right. Because there are people out there who are willing to subvert us, and we have to be able to say that. We're not talking about people who mildly disagree. That happens in families, it happens in communities all the time. I'm talking about hardcore people who have a subversive agenda. And if you read what they say, don't have to worry about what Bill Donahue says. Read what they say. You'll see that I'm right.
Bill Donahue, always a pleasure talking with you. Thank you for joining us here on Catholic Connection from the Catholic League.
Thank you so much, and keep up all the great work.
Read all the information that he shares in the Catholic League, one of our articles about Lindsey Graham and keeping us abreast of the work that they're doing in the Catholic world. When we come back, Morera Johnson from CatholicMom.com will be joining us on the dog days of summer, keeping kids active. Don't go away. It's the dog days of summer, keeping kids active, happy, and connected to the faith. That is what we're talking about today. CatholicMom.com. Morera Johnson joins us here on Catholic Connection. And I know, Maria, when my daughter was young, it was a challenge, but a lot of fun keeping her active. We did that 20 minutes of the package, to keep her abreast of what she learned the previous year, so she didn't slump into that summer slide, right? And wasn't falling behind before the next school year. So Thanks for joining us, the Dog Days of Summer. What should we be knowing about keeping our kids active? What do you want to share with us here today, Maria?
Oh, my goodness. Well, at CatholicMom.com, we have so many writers and so many beautiful women who are mothers in different seasons of life. So if you want to get some really good ideas about what to do with the kids over the summer and throughout the year, you'll find your mom that's in your circumstances, and you can hold on to that. But lately, what we've been talking about is travel. Many families try to work in their vacation time in the summer. And personally, I did a lot of staycations because I was a teacher, and the last thing I wanted to do was move anywhere. But we would do some family travel. And one of the things that we recommend and kind of really look into is how we can maintain the faith, keep it alive, keep it robust, keep it normal throughout the summer. When the pool is calling you and, making a fort in the backyard is important, and maybe doing that travel to visit, relatives that are far away. So we have so many beautiful articles this summer that give some cute ideas and some serious ones, too.
Yeah, because it's a challenge sometimes, Maria, to figure out now what do we do today? What do we do today? And I talked about how I did the summer packet with my daughter that the school supplied to us, right? That it was like 20 minutes of learning and the rest of the day was open. How important is consistency? We'd have a routine, breakfast, the packet, and then figure out what to do for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I think that's so important, especially for myself. I was a teacher, and so I liked the routine. And I think that our children respond well to routine. Many of the activities in the summer are rather structured. Sometimes kids can go to camp or a day camp. There's always the ubiquitous VBS in the community. So there are activities that are on a timeline. And so I think that kids also need to be bored a little bit, but for the most part, they respond well to getting up at a normal hour. Maybe the older kids want to sleep in until noon, and that's up to the parents to decide about. But usually in August, I started getting them back into what their school routine was going to look like, especially. Gave them a break at the early part of the summer, but kind of eased them back in. When the school supplies come out, that's when.
Yeah. That's a good.
I think it's like right
marker.
now.
Well, that's probably a good marker because they got to get back into that waking up at a certain time and being rested and being ready for the school day. So that's a good point. Is getting them back into that school routine. They probably don't like it, but and school supplies I think do come out a little too early sometimes, right? But it's a good marker.
With Halloween.
Yeah, you're right. So,
it is a marker.
Yeah, it's a good marker. Morera Johnson is with us, CatholicMom.com. We're talking about the Dog Days of Summer, keeping kids active, happy, and connected to the faith. Let's talk about that, connected to the faith and not connected to, social media and electronics all the time. Talk to us about that, Maria.
I love it. There's an article by Ann DeSantis that we have running that's called Keeping the Faith Alive in the Summer. Her whole concept is that when faith is woven naturally into the summer, it feels less like another task, right? It's just more of a way of seeing the world. So find moments to include prayer in your day. I think most of us will pray right before meals. That's a good thing. But what if when you take a walk in the afternoon when it gets a little cooler and you pray the rosary? Or if the children are too small, perhaps you can pray a decade of the rosary. Our founder, Venerable Patrick Peyton at Holy Cross Family Ministries, is the priest who said the family that prays together stays together. So finding these opportunities are a beautiful way to just integrate the faith so that it's normalized, so that it is a part of who you are. It's a part of the family identity. Find field trips with a twist. Sure, you might go to Six Flags, but what if you go to a basilica that's in your area? Things like that. Having we find ourselves in nature quite often. Perhaps a prayer of gratitude when you see a beautiful flower or you encounter, a little critter out in the wild. Wouldn't that be just a beautiful way to just be a reminder that we are beloved by a beautiful Father who's a creator?
Yeah, I remember I used to take my daughter to a playground at a Catholic school in the summer, and sometimes we'd pop into the church and just sit for a few minutes and just pray, or, look at the crucifix and put holy water on us. It's just that, you get some time in the playground, but you're at a Catholic school and the church was often open. So there's little things that you can do just to kind of keep instilling the faith throughout the summer months, throughout their life. Morera Johnson with us, CatholicMom.com. The Dog Days of Summer, keeping kids active, happy, connected to the faith. Let's talk about keeping them disconnected from technology and the challenges that could be for some families when some kids are so addicted to their iPads and iPhones.
Oh, there's also a great article by Shelley Henley Kelly called Make Family Travel Meaningful and Memorable. And she talks about the things that you can do on a road trip, but honestly, it expands to everything that you're talking about, because get together to play cards and have the children join you in making these summer plans. It doesn't mean that they have to, think about how to get a hotel or how to, book a flight.
Yeah.
But hey, we're going to go visit Grandma on the West Coast, and these are some things that you can see on the West Coast. What is your favorite thing, or what is your number one bucket item? Involve the kids. That's such a beautiful thing to do. After all, the family that is praying together is staying together, right? It's a beautiful way to give everybody their voice and make everyone seen in a vacation setting, but throughout the summer.
You know what? I love that. You make a really good point. It doesn't have to be a major decision, but even something like give them choices between a couple different restaurants to go to on vacation, or, do you guys want to go here tonight or there tonight, or do you want to do this activity today or this activity today? Let them choose between the list that you have figured out that you want to do during your vacation, and they feel more involved. That's a really good point. We have about a minute left with you here, Maria. What else do you want to share with our listeners about the Dog Days of Summer and keeping our kids active from CatholicMom.com?
Oh, one of the great things that I read was adding praise and worship songs to your regular music playlist. Isn't that great?
Yes,
have a little
that's
dance
a great
party.
idea. Yes, I love that.
Yeah, so it's beautiful.
Yeah.
So join us at Catholic Mom. There's going to be more stories about summer, and you know what's happening. Those school supplies are coming out, making that transition into fall and school.
What, just a few seconds here, Maria, what inspired you to do the work that you're doing with CatholicMom.com? Just kind of give us an overview. I know you're a school teacher, but what about it brings you joy? Oh, we ran out of time. I'm sorry, Maria.
No worries. No worries.
I'm sorry. There's the music. That's the cue. God bless you and all that you do. And thanks for joining us here on Catholic Connection. CatholicMom.com, Morera Johnson with us. We're going to come back with Kelly Salomon from Newman Guide News. Don't go away. We're back here on Catholic Connection. Vanessa Denha-Garmo filling in for my dear sister in Christ this morning, Teresa Tomeo. And as always, Kelly Solomon's with us from the Newman Guide News. And so much, Kelly, to talk with you about this morning. So we'll try to get through as much as we can. How are you this morning?
Great to be with you, Vanessa.
Always a pleasure to talk with you. And so I know you and T had planned to talk about vocations today. Approximately 400 men ordained to the priesthood in the U.S. this year, and many ordained this summer. So tell us about this.
Yes, many of us attended ordination to the priesthood over the spring and summer. As you mentioned, there's been about 400 men ordained to the Catholic priesthood this year in the United States. There's growing ordinations in the Midwest and Southeast dioceses, including the diocese where I am, Charlotte, North Carolina, actually led the country with 10 men ordained to the priesthood this year, which is wonderful. Some interesting statistics related to education coming out of these ordinations, Vanessa. One of them is that 11% of the newly ordained priests mentioned being homeschooled at some point in their lives, which I think is a really beautiful reflection of parents taking on seriously their role as primary educators of their children, and homeschool parents for sure in a special way who help form their children for these vocations. So this is really great news. You know, many of the new priests mentioned the Holy Rosary, adoration, family dinners, all of these factors contributing to their vocations. But, Vanessa, it's not all good news. We are still in a vocations crisis. You know, a number of years ago, in 1970, there were more than 800 ordinations to the holy priesthood, and we're at about half that number today and has been for several years. So as we look to sources of hope, where can we see that renewal? What's going to help build up future vocations in our church and for our nation? I looked at some great Catholic schools and colleges that are really partnering with parents and helping prepare students for their vocations.
So, you know, it's interesting that you say that because just yesterday on my own program, Epiphany, I interviewed one of the 4 newly ordained priests in the Archdiocese of Detroit, Father Daniel Whalen. And one of the things that struck me was he was talking about the seeds that were planted. And he first talked about his family and, you know, what he learned from his very devout Catholic family. He went to Catholic school. But he also talked about the seed being planted when he was in middle school and he visited the seminary. And those field trips, those visitations to seminary are so instrumental in kind of planting that seed for these young men, these young boys to think about the path to the priesthood. And maybe that's where the Lord is calling them. And so, you know, these opportunities that there are to expose these young men to the priesthood and vocations and ask them, you know, is this something you'd consider?
Absolutely. And for students who, you know, may have already been considering the priesthood or have never thought about it before, and they're going off to college, it's a great thing for Catholic parents to think about, you know, where is a place that's going to help form them as a person, that's going to integrally educate them, that's going to, influence the faith in every subject they take, where they're going to make great friendships, where they're going to meet holy priests on campus. And so, you know, we look at the colleges we recommend, as you know, Vanessa, and the Newman Guide, and these colleges share widely the number of priests and religious that are coming out of their college. They see it as a great fruit of their work. They track and publicize the data because they want Catholic families to know about this. And this is not the case at every Catholic college across the country. Unfortunately, at some, you'd be hard-pressed to find data like that touts their vocations coming out of their colleges. But for example, 7% of alumni from Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. have answered the call to religious vocation. 5% at Christendom College in Front Royal, Virginia. 4.5% at Thomas Aquinas College. 3.6% at the wonderful Franciscan University of Steubenville. So clearly these places are doing something different. And Vanessa, we wouldn't have this vocations crisis on our hands if all of our Catholic colleges were reporting numbers of vocations like this. I can put this data in perspective just a little bit. Christendom College, as many of your listeners might know, was founded in 1977, has a student body of around 500 students. And with this student body, they have helped foster more than 112 alumni priests. And if every Catholic college in the country accounted for the same amount, we wouldn't have this vocations crisis on our hands today. There would be more than 400 additional ordinations every year, which would double our number of vocations. So we're so grateful for the good work at educational institutions, like you said in the priest story, that are helping partner with parents, that are helping continue that formation they received in their youth, and that are going to help them be generous in responding to whatever God has called them to do in their life.
What can other Catholic colleges learn from Christendom colleges and strong Catholic colleges helping vocations? What are some key areas? I know you went over it, but what are there some things that they should look at what these colleges are doing?
Absolutely. They really are models of faithful Catholic education. You look at everything from the academics, incorporating the faith in every subject, to the campus life, residences that are helping promote chaste and healthy living, to student activities that are wholesome and are helping form good friendships. I mean, go and visit these campuses and see the daily masses on campus and the number of students just filling the churches with the daily mass on campus, the wholesome activities going on, the faithful professors and staff, these colleges place such an emphasis on hiring for mission, hiring those people who are going to be witnesses of the faith and are going to incorporate the faith in their classes and help students discern their vocations during these very pivotal times in the college years.
So just switching gears a little bit, moving into other headlines, education headlines, on educating students with intellectual and developmental disabilities in Catholic schools. Tell us about that, Kelly.
Yes, this is an article that caught my attention by Dr. Carmen Chapetta at Word on Fire. She is a mother of 5 children, and her youngest son has Down syndrome. And she wrote a really incredible article on how children with developmental disabilities need to be included in Catholic education. And not as an afterthought, not as a once we get there and we can do that kind of thing, but she lays out a real plan of how students with these disabilities should be included from the forefront. She says in one paragraph that we're really building up a pro-life culture. We're influencing the culture for years to come when we truly welcome all students into Catholic education. She said, in fact, most people educated in Catholic schools since the 1950s would be hard-pressed to remember a classmate with an intellectual disability like Down syndrome or similar. Students with disabilities need to know the love of Christ and know that he came to redeem them too. Catholic education must place all human persons, including those who are vulnerable or learn differently, at the center. It must consider these students' needs in their instructional design and must do this as a primary responsibility, not as an afterthought.
Wow. Yeah, we have schools here in Michigan, Catholic schools that have a particular curriculum within their schools for children with disabilities. So some schools here are doing that very well here in Michigan, which is wonderful.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So let's talk about JP Catholic celebrates blessing and dedication of Creative Arts Complex, the JP Catholic News.
Yes, John Paul Great Catholic University is in California, wonderful Catholic college. They're really impacting the culture for Christ by integrating the Catholic faith with majors in the arts. And so the university just doubled its classroom space, which is really exciting as there's so few opportunities for students to study majors like filmmaking, animation, design, from a truly Catholic perspective. And so now that the university has doubled its classroom space, it's going to be able to welcome even more students and to do even better what it's been doing for a number of years.
Wow, that's wonderful. Talking with Kelly Salomon here today on Catholic Connection, and Vanessa Denhagarmo filling in for my dear sister this morning, Teresa Tomeo. Holy Apostles freezes undergraduate tuition, Holy Apostles College and Seminary. Tell us about this, Kelly.
You know, this is an issue that the Cardinal Newman Society, we want Catholic education to be faithful and affordable for Catholic families. And so bravo to Holy Apostles College, which is available in person in Connecticut or online for their undergraduate and master's programs. And they have decided to freeze tuition. Once again, they have for several years now in a row in an effort to make their education more affordable to Catholic families.
You know, what can other Catholic schools learn from that? I know it's a challenge. I know it's very expensive to educate students. You know, when you freeze tuition, is there a push for more fundraising, or how does that work?
Yes, absolutely. You know, these colleges and schools definitely rely on generous supporters to help do what they do every day. We're really encouraged by the number of innovative models that are coming up all over the country, partly due to school choice funds that are now available for many Catholic schools for families to participate in some level of school choice funds that they can put towards their, you know, Catholic school tuition. But other innovative models. It reminds me of Father DeSales in Virginia. He's at a parish that doesn't have a school attached to it, but he collects a special collection and meets with donors of his parish to help families that are in public schools, to provide them with scholarships to help send them to a number of good Catholic schools in the area that they otherwise wouldn't be able to afford. So we need creative solutions. We need lots of more examples like this because families need to, you know, the church's mission is evangelization, and Catholic education is one of those key means of evangelization. That every Catholic child, we need to find a way for every child to experience that truly faithful Catholic education. Things like this, freezing tuitions, school choice funds, special scholarship funds, really go a long way in helping Catholic families afford Catholic education.
You know, Kelly, here's an interesting op-ed. New York unions are, quote, unquote, telling on themselves by opposing school choice tax credits. What is this all about?
Yes, so this is one of the new school choice items I was referencing. That this is going to take place beginning in January 2027. It's part of the One Big Beautiful Bill, which will allow taxpayers to deduct up to $1,700 for donations to certain scholarships that will help students escape low-quality public schools and, put that money towards an excellent Catholic school. So states have to opt into this program in order to participate. I think there's about 29 states that have already signed up, and New York seems to be going back and forth on whether or not they're going to be signing up for this. And to me, it really seems like a no-brainer that they would sign up. I mean, look at the results of New York public schools. The majority of students failed the standardized tests for math or reading or both just last year alone. Yeah. Right. And so what's going to help schools improve overall? Competition and choice. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And this won't be this, it's a common misconception that this is going to take money away from the public schools. It doesn't. It would just help improve the educational outcomes without spending a dollar of the state's budget. So, we hope that this takes part in more states and that more options become available for parents to be able to afford Catholic education.
We have seconds left. Kelly, can you just get in? Oh, we don't. Sorry. Ran out of time. Kelly Salomon, thank you so much for being with us here on Catholic Connection. Always a pleasure chatting with you.
Great chatting with you, Vanessa. Take care. God bless.
Okay, we're wrapping up this hour here on Catholic Connection. Here, Vanessa Denha-Garmo filling for Teresa Tomeo. We'll be right back. We're wrapping up this hour of Catholic Connection. Vanessa Denha-Garmo filling in for Teresa Tomeo this morning. She'll be back in her host chair tomorrow. Thank you to all the guests for joining us here this hour. Bill Donahue from the Catholic League sharing with us his perspective on Senator Lindsey Graham, who recently passed away. And as I read in the newscast, his sister is considering running for his seat. So he's written about Senator Lindsey Graham. You can read his column in the Catholic League on him. Morera Johnson from CatholicMom.com. Thank you so much for sharing with us insights on the dog days of summer, keeping kids active, happy, and connected to the faith and all the things that we could do. Wonderful articles about options for kids at all ages of how to keep our families occupied and safe this summer, and keeping them educated, too, on not just academics, but our faith and what we could do as families. Of course, we know that famous saying from Father Peyton, families that pray together stay together. So how are we continuing to pray with our families this summer season? And, of course, Kelly Salomon keeping us abreast of everything that's going on with the Newman Guide and news and all the wonderful stories that they're covering and the Catholic schools that they're researching and that end up on the Newman Guide list, right? That's really important. That helps us eliminate us having to do that research. Coming up next in the EWTN Radio Extra, Sean Corcoran will be with us, how the group of men, life support, and men affected by abortion. And of course, I'll be sharing with you my coach's commentary on how we show up every day, which helps create the cultures in which we live and work. Join us there, EWTN Radio Extra.
Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
Good Tuesday on EWTN Radio Extra. Vanessa Denha Garmo filling in for Teresa Tomeo this morning. She'll be back in her host chair tomorrow. We'll be talking with Sean Corcoran here today and how the group Men of Life support life and men affected by abortion. So Men for Life is a national pro-life organization whose mission is to change the culture by restoring biblical masculinity, equipping men to speak boldly and stand confidently for life, family, and faith. They say we believe abortion can end in a single generation, but only if men return to the arena to fight boldly for life. Their flagship initiative is a fatherhood mentorship program run through pregnancy centers, raising up young fathers facing unplanned pregnancy through mentorship, community, and biblical masculinity, not just saving the baby, but changing the man, and through him, the culture. So important, right? I'm all about changing culture and creating thriving, Christ-centered cultures everywhere we go. I'll be talking a little bit about that in my coach's commentary and how we show up. And this is really along those lines of how men show up, right? As true leaders of the family. Men for Life is not just currently doing any work related to abortion healing for men. They can talk generally about why men who have been impacted by abortion are silent, and why reaching them through stories helps them to recognize that they are not alone in that suffering. Oftentimes we forget the suffering men face and what they go through, knowing they have lost a child to abortion. And how once they're able to come forward, they could become some of the strongest warriors to life. We've seen these amazing stories of women and the March for Life and other pro-life events where they speak about their personal stories and the lives they changed, their own stories. We need more men to stand up and speak up about their stories. So we'll talk about these things often and relate them to their own journey, right? So we'll be talking today to Sean about how stories can relate to the journeys of other men. So from an organizational standpoint, with the resources they currently have, Men for Life is focused on ending abortion by restoring authentic masculinity, reaching men in unplanned pregnancies through fatherhood programs for pregnancy centers, reaching men in churches and men's conferences to connect the drive towards biblical masculinity to the obligation to speak boldly and stand confidently for life, and really calling on men to reject silence and passivity and enter the arena to fight for life. This is so important, and they're setting the example, giving other men the courage to do the same, to stand up and speak up. And we all must do this, right? Sometimes you just need that one person, that one role model, that one courageous person to stand up that will encourage others to do the same. So we'll be talking with Sean Corcoran here today about Men for Life and the example they're setting and the work that they're doing and how that will help and encourage other men to do the same. So also this hour, I was sharing is what T usually calls T's 2 cents, is my coach's commentary. As many of you know, I'm a certified life and leadership coach. I help clients develop their careers, their purpose in life, using their natural talents and gifts and understanding how they show up every single day, what their natural talents are, what their weaknesses are, how they naturally communicate, to develop their careers, their leadership style, so we can create thriving cultures wherever we go. We identify why there's high turnover or disconnect in workplaces or ministries and what's going on. So it really all starts with how we show up. It's self-awareness. Who are we? How did God create us to be? What are our natural talents? What are things that are getting in our way? What's sabotaging us from moving forward? We have to understand ourselves first in order to change the culture and in order to become the best version of who we are. We have to know where we're starting at right now. We meet people where they're at. That's what I do as a coach. I meet my clients where they're at on their own journey, and I help them develop their careers, their leadership. I truly believe everybody has a leader in them. They just have to develop it. They have to bring it out. And you don't have to be leading a Fortune 500 company. You're leading your own life. And you want to be a true leader. You're leading your family. You're leading a ministry. You're leading a volunteer group. Whatever it may be, we have to all show up as true leaders. And so that's what I'll be talking about in my coach's commentary. But right now, it is 5 minutes past the hour here on Catholic Connection, and it's time for the news on EWTN. And we're going to kick off this newscast with a weather update from Tammy Trio.
The big weather story is Tropical Storm Bertha in the southeast. Storm warnings stretch from the Florida Panhandle westward into southeastern Louisiana. Expect heavy rain, gusty winds, rough surf, and dangerous rip currents, along with the threat of flash flooding from the Florida Panhandle through coastal Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. The Northeast will enjoy a pleasant sunny day with highs ranging from near 80 in Boston to 86 in Philadelphia, while the temperatures in the Midwest will hit 90 degrees, along with scattered thunderstorms capable of gusty winds and heavy downpours. Temperatures are climbing into the low 100s across the Plain States, with strong thunderstorms a possibility. The Southwest remains dangerously hot, with Phoenix hitting a high of 112. Monsoonal thunderstorms could develop over Arizona and New Mexico. Along the West Coast, sunny and hot. Temperatures hitting in the 90s to the low 100s throughout California. And mostly sunny in the Northwest, with temperatures in the 70s to the low 80s. That's your national forecast. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
Bishop John Oberis of the Diocese of Rockville Center and 4 communities of religious sisters have filed a lawsuit against New York's Attorney General and Commissioner of Faith over a law they say would force them to participate in the process of physician-assisted suicide. The Diocese of Rockville Center, New York, and the religious communities, the Carmelite Sisters for the Aged and Infirm, the Dominican Sisters of Hawthorne, the Missionary Sisters of St. Benedict, and the Little Sisters of the Poor provide care for elderly and terminally ill people, and they say their Catholic faith prohibits them from participation in the process in any way. Democratic New York Governor Kathy Hochul signed a bill legalizing physician-assisted suicide in February, and the law goes into effect in August. Although some facilities can opt out of parts of the physician-assisted suicide, the exemptions are limited, and the law imposes additional requirements on the diocese and religious communities. The sister of the late South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham will run for the full Senate term to replace him. Mark Mayfield has that story.
Senator Darlene Graham made the announcement during an interview with Fox News. This comes after she was selected by Governor Henry McMaster to serve out the remainder of her brother's term following his passing. South Carolina Republican Congressman Russell Fry, Attorney Duke Buckner, businessman Mark Lynch, and Congressman Ralph Norman are also vying for the Republican nomination. The state holds a special GOP primary on August 11th. I'm Mark Mayfield.
New York City Mayor Mandani is doubling down on comments made about possibly arresting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Lizzie Rodabali reports.
The Israeli leader is expected to visit the Big Apple in September for the UN General Assembly.
My administration will follow all applicable local laws. That is our commitment. That is something that we will follow through on when it comes to an adherence to local law. And that's all I have to add on that.
It comes after a recent New York Times podcast interview where the mayor said Netanyahu belongs in the Hague. President Trump dismissed claims from Mamdani in a post on Truth Social saying Netanyahu will not be arrested while in the United States. Netanyahu called the ICC a kangaroo court with no jurisdiction over Israelis. In New York, I'm Lizzie Radabali.
President Trump is opposing additional 50% tariffs on certain Canadian goods over alleged trade discrimination. Mark Mayfield fills us in.
The White House says Trump signed 3 proclamations on Monday that target certain Canadian imports with the tariffs as a response to the trade discrimination. The White House says Trump is leveling the playing field for crucial American exports that include motor vehicles, alcohol, and dairy. The Canadian products being targeted range from wine to hockey sticks. I'm Mark Mayfield.
Gas prices are creeping up again as the conflict between the U.S. and Iran heats up. Tammy Trio reports.
Traffic through the Strait of Hormuz appears to have slowed, sending the price of oil upward in the last few weeks. According to AAA, today's average price for a gallon of regular unleaded is a penny over $4 a gallon. That's up from $3.85 a week ago. Drivers in California are paying the most at $5.51 a gallon. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
A federal judge is signing off on what may be the largest class action settlement in the history of the U.S. copyright law. Roy O'Neill reports.
As part of the settlement, Anthropic will pay $1.5 billion to authors and book publishers who sued over copyright infringement. A group of authors accused Anthropic of misusing their books to train its AI chatbot, Claude. The payments authorized by Monday's final court approval in San Francisco will come in $3,000 installments sent to the owners of 500,000 different published works. I'm Rory O'Neill.
Fairlife has halted its production of milk in the U.S. following a ransomware attack. Matt Mattinson has more.
Coca-Cola, which purchased Fairlife in 2020, said in a statement that the impacts of the incident are not yet known. The beverage giant added, however, that the breach has not affected product quality or safety. It's unclear when the breach occurred or when production will resume. I'm Matt Mattinson.
With the latest technology news, here's Mark Mayfield.
Thousands of Google employees are demanding more protection against layoffs. Daniel Martindale has the story.
About 4,500 Google employees have signed and delivered a petition to Google and Alphabet Incorporated CEO Sundar Pichai. Members of the Alphabet Workers Union delivered the petition on Google's Mountain View campus late last week. Union leaders say they had a productive meeting with one of Pichai's staff members. It comes with the tech market being radically reshaped by the emergence of AI technology. Google's rival companies like Oracle, Meta, and LinkedIn have laid off thousands of employees since 2022. Citing AI.
The Trump administration is reportedly controlling access to the most advanced AI models. Sources tell CNBC that the White House is now vetting which companies can get access to the latest frontier models. The Trump administration insists the decision still rests with companies like Anthropic and OpenAI. And Google's parent company Alphabet and Tesla will report second quarter financial results on Wednesday. Intel is going to try and recapture its 2025 glow when it reports its earnings on Thursday. Tech Report, I'm Mark Mayfield.
EWTN News reports designed by God, guided by love, open to life. It's the theme of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, USCCB 2026, Natural Family Planning, NFP Awareness Week campaign. The Bishop's annual NFP campaign takes place July 19th to the 25th, highlights God's design for married love, the gift of life, and the Church's teaching on NFP methods. To educate people on the matter, the NFP program of the USCCB develops a poster each year with supportive materials to be displayed in parishes, hospitals, NFP classrooms, marriage preparation sites, doctors' offices, family life centers, and campus ministry centers. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and his wife Usha announced the birth of their fourth child, a baby boy named Alec Neil Vance, on Sunday, July 19th. In a statement shared on social media, the couple wrote, "We are excited to announce that our baby boy, Alec Neil Vance, was born this morning. Usha and the baby are happy and healthy, and our kids are overjoyed to meet the little brother." The Vances are already parents to Ewan, Vivek, and Maribel. EWTN reports that Vance was received into the Catholic Church in 2019 and recently released a book about his faith journey titled Communion, Finding My Way Back to Faith. Also, Steubenville Youth Conference marks 50 years, reaching more than 1 million young people. This also from EWTN. For 5 decades, the Steubenville Youth Conference has helped more than 1 million young people encounter Jesus Christ. It is 14 minutes past the hour here on Catholic Connection. Vanessa Den-Hagarmo filling in for Teresa Tomeo. We come back with my coach's commentary. It all starts with how you show up and knowing how you show up. The self-awareness is so important. So as many of you know, I am a certified life and leadership coach. I work with clients on developing their careers, their leadership style, and creating thriving cultures where people could be productive, whether in the workforce or in ministry, that we could, diffuse the disconnection with how we communicate, how productive we are, if we're reaching our goals. So whether you want to change your career, elevate your career, improve your management style, develop your leadership presence, create a thriving culture, find a new path, get unstuck, improve your evangelization skills, or simply show up to client calls and sales calls with more confidence, I want you to hear this very clearly. It all starts with knowing how you show up. Self-awareness is so important. If we want to be the best version of ourselves, if we want to truly become how God created us to be and set the world on fire, as St. Catherine of Siena has said, we must know where we're starting right now. Who are we? What's going on in our lives? Because before you can grow, you have to understand the version of yourself that's leading, communicating, deciding, reacting, and influencing right now. See, we all have God-given talents. We all have weaknesses. We all have blocks and things that sabotage us from moving forward, right? We all have things going on in our lives that affect our day. Maybe we woke up late. Maybe we spilled coffee on ourselves. Maybe we got in an argument with our spouse. Maybe our children are kind of driving us crazy, right? And we're walking out the door, and that all contributes to how we show up wherever we go. See, most people try to change their circumstances without ever examining their own patterns, their own habits, and what's going on in their own mind. And we want new results, but we're using the same habits, the same mindset, the same communication style, and the same blind spots that have been shaping our outcomes for years. And we wonder, why are we still here? Why am I still stuck? Why am I not moving forward? Why have I not developed? Growth really doesn't begin with action. Growth begins with awareness and really understanding yourself. Now, I've said this time and time again, to really know who we are, we must know God first. It starts with our Christ-centered life, knowing how he created us, made in his likeness and image, but uniquely made with our own talents. So every conversation you have with your team, your clients, your family, your friends in ministry, even with yourself, is shaping your future and the culture in which you live and work. Your communication style influences trust, teamwork, engagement, and performance. It determines whether people lean in or pull away. What is your relationships like in your life, in your personal life, in your work life? Are people pulling away from you, or are they leaning into you? Whether they feel safe or guarded, whether they feel led or managed. I had a conversation with a potential client I'm going to be working with soon on managers and in a particular retail setting. I'm not going to give too much detail, but there's certain managers that they are not leading people, they're bossing people. That creates a toxic culture, right? We want to lead people. We want people to follow us, not be scared of us. And this is true in your own personal life or in ministry or where you're, volunteering in. So here's the truth. Most people have no idea how they actually show up. They don't. I coach all the time, and people are unaware of their own presence, their own communication style. It's not so much understanding how I communicate. It's understanding how my communication lands on other people, how they hear what I say. And my dad used to always say, it's not, if you don't know, no one cares what you have to say if you don't know how to say it. It's not just the content, it's the delivery. So they know how they intend to communicate. We all have good intentions, and many of us good ones, but we don't always know how that people are experiencing our communication. And that's the gap between intention and impact, is where misunderstandings, conflict, frustration, and stalled careers live. See, your strengths are always in the room. Your weaknesses are always in the room. Your blind spots are always in the room. Your stress behaviors are always in the room. And people feel this in you. They see it in you, whether you realize it or not. This is how we're showing up. So if you want to elevate yourself, your leadership, your career, your personal relationships, you must understand what energizes you, what drains you, what triggers you, what motivates you, what derails you, what habits help you, what habits sabotage you. This is self-awareness. Your mindset, how you think, how you interpret situations, how you respond under pressure is the engine behind your behavior. So if you don't understand your mindset, you'll keep repeating patterns you don't even realize you have. What's going on in your head? How do you think about yourself? How do you communicate with yourself? How do you communicate with other people? It all starts with your thoughts. People don't get stuck because they lack talent. No. They get stuck because they lack clarity. We all bring value to the table. The disconnect is often because we don't know our own value and the value of the people on our team. We get stuck because we lack clarity about who we are, about how we communicate, about what we want, about what's getting in the way. Clarity that comes from self-awareness and the clarity that comes from Christ. And there's various tools that I use in my coaching world, and I love when I can incorporate my faith. Like I do have clients that do reach out to me from a Catholic perspective that are trying to improve their careers, their life, their businesses, and they want it from a Christ-centered approach. And I love that the most. Not all clients. Some clients are very much in the secular world, and that's okay. But it's all about awareness, right? And there's assessments that help us understand how we show up. Like I have my own Epiphany Communications assessment. It's free on my website. And it just kind of starts the conversation. It's not as scientifically based as like the Clifton Strengths that I use or DISC that I use, or the Positive Intelligence Saboteur assessment I use. It's one that just kind of starts the conversation to understand how you naturally communicate. And I designed it for my own research and some AI tools that helped me create it with another coach. And it just starts us thinking about your own communication styles. And then there's also, called and gifted, or the many parts where we understand what our charisms are. Because along with knowing our own talents, our own communication style, we should also know our own charisms and how we're called to evangelize the faith and bring others to Christ. See, all these tools give us a snapshot on how we show up every single day. Our strengths, our communication habits, our blind spots, our mindset, the behaviors that either elevate or undermine our influence. They give us language. They give us clarity. They give us direction. And once you have that direction, you can grow with intention instead of by trial and error. You want to be intentional about your habits. You want to be intentional about reaching your goals. So whatever you want to change in your life, your career, your leadership, your relationships, your ministry, how you evangelize, you need to know what you bring to the table. You want to elevate your career, you need to know what sets you apart. If you want to improve your management style, you need to know how your team experiences you. If you want to develop your leadership presence, you need to know what strengths you naturally lead with. If you want to create thriving cultures, you need to understand how your communication shapes the environment around you. If you want to get unstuck, you need to know what's holding you back. If you want to show up confidently on with friends and family and in the workplace and in the church and in ministry, you have to understand your strengths and the habits that form your life every day. Everything really begins with self-awareness. Knowing Christ, knowing yourself. Awareness leads to intention. Intention leads to growth. And once you understand yourself, you can communicate with clarity, lead with confidence, and manage your weaknesses, leverage your strength, shift your mindset, and build healthier relationships. Know who you are, made in the likeness and image of Christ. That is my coach's commentary for today. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with our next guest. Don't go away. Men for Life is a national pro-life organization whose mission is to change the culture by restoring biblical masculinity, equipping men to speak boldly, and stand confidently for life, family, and faith. And to talk with us about that and much more is our next guest, Sean Corcoran. Thank you so much for being with us here today, Sean.
Thank you for having me, Teresa.
Vanessa filling in for Teresa today, but it's okay. We both sound alike. So, Sean, tell us what led you into this ministry, Men for Life, and give us an overview of it. I kind of gave a brief description, but give us more of a detailed overview.
Yeah, God led me into this ministry. It was something that I had not only no interest in doing, but I said no for 2 years.
Wow.
After I stopped practicing law, they started asking me if I would come run it, and I said, there is no way that you're getting me to run a pro-life nonprofit, and started working on, on a different business plan. And it was on the airplane After 2 years of telling Men for Life no, on my way to meet with a business consultant for a business that was ready to roll out the following week, that God very clearly said, "You're going to run this nonprofit." And so I got back on the plane after that meeting. I was hoping that the consultant would be against it so I could blame him for not listening to God. And he was instead very supportive. And so I got back on the airplane and I emailed them and said, "Hey, if you guys are still looking, I will take this job." And they said yes. And so I've been kind of just following God's plan for that ever since.
Well, Sean, what was it do you think was causing you to want to initially say no?
I left practicing law because while I was very good at practicing law, I was very bad at practicing law and being a present husband and a present father. I have 5 young children, and that was more important to me. And, we'd built a standard of living, and so my plan was I'm going to go do something. It really was, I was following my path, right? I was following my plan instead of listening to God's will. And my plan was to create a business that would allow me more time to be at home with my kids while still making a substantial amount of money. And I had a plan for that. And this was not that plan. You don't run a nonprofit to make money.
Yeah. So let's talk about the nonprofit Men for Life. What do you mean when you say that abortion is a product of failed masculinity?
Yeah, so I mean that today, in our current society, with the state of abortion as it is right now, that is the product of failed masculinity. If we look at 1975, 2 years after Roe versus Wade, there were 1 million abortions in America. In 2025, 50 years later, there were 1.26 million abortions in America. So we're not winning. There's a lot of fighting going on. There's a lot of work being done, but we're not winning this fight. And I believe that the reason we're not winning this is because of failed masculinity. And that comes from 2 directions, right? Mm-hmm. It comes from the bad actors, the men who are failing in their masculinity, in their roles to be protectors, providers, leaders, and servants, right? The men who are using women, using abortion, so that they can use women as objects for their own personal pleasure without fear of consequence and repercussion, right? Mm-hmm. So we've got that side of it. And then we've got the men who have acquiesced to the opposition's violent suggestion that we sit down and shut up, right? Good men who have agreed to be silent and passive for the last 53 years. And that is a failure of masculinity as well. It takes men leading in their homes, in their communities, in their churches, in this country, and leading vocally. 54% of men in America identify as pro-life based on a Gallup poll from June of 2025.
Wow.
32% of women in that same poll. So if 54% of men in America are pro-life, where are they? What are they doing? It's not enough to just answer a poll anonymously and say I'm pro-life. If you're scared to have a conversation when it comes up in the office or amongst your friends or in your own family, because the reason that this next generation is coming out and, in many cases being for abortion is because they don't have the leadership of their parents, and that leadership starts with the husband and the father. And so it's that passivity and that silence that Men for Life is working to get men to reject so that they can step off of the sidelines, get into the arena to fight boldly for life, family, and faith.
And how are Men for Life doing that? How are they giving other men the courage to stand up and speak up?
Well, I think that, if I'm going to ask men to lead by example, then I have to be setting that example myself. Right. Mm-hmm. And the other men who I call to help me with this have to be willing to speak boldly. And it's hard. The opposition is violent. I get death threats, not just on myself, but on my children. I get lots and lots of hate online, and it's just the work of the enemy trying to silence me.
Yeah.
And so leading by that example, but then calling them to do something, to take action. And the first and most important initiative that Men for Life has is a fatherhood program for pregnancy centers. Our goal is to be in 1,600 pregnancy centers in the next 10 years. Pregnancy centers understand the value of a fatherhood program because they know that statistics out of the Vitae Foundation show that 97% of men who see an ultrasound and complete a fatherhood program choose life. That's higher than any percentage of women. And it's because of the leadership of those men, once they recognize that, hey, I can be a dad. And it's not even, do I want to be a dad? It's the competence and the confidence to be able to do it. And so our fatherhood program is built upon not just parenting skills, right? Like not how to change a diaper on a doll for a baby that's going to be here in 26 weeks with a woman you're not in a relationship with. That's not going to get these men's attention. But how do we fill that void that they have from living in a fatherless home in many cases to what does it mean to be a man, and building them with principles of biblical masculinity so that they become the protectors, the providers, the leaders, and the servants, and that they want to leave a legacy that honors God. So that's the most important place that we are calling men to action.
We have about a minute before we have to take a break. I just want to talk about your mission real quick before we head into a break. Restoring biblical masculinity. What does that mean?
So when I say biblical masculinity, I mean to protect, to provide, to lead, and to serve. And that's the basis of all of it, to serve. All of the other functions of masculinity come at the service of others. Those entrusted to our service, our families, our children, our friends, our communities. And that's the difference between toxic masculinity and biblical masculinity.
I love that. We're talking with Sean Corcoran here today. We're talking about Men for Life, a national pro-life organization whose mission is to change the culture by restoring biblical masculinity, equipping men to speak boldly and stand confidently for life, family, and faith. We're gonna head into break in a minute, but I want to talk to you when we come back is why do you believe that men are the key to ending abortion in a single generation, and what can they do today? We're going to take a quick break. Maybe you could start that and we'll continue that. But why do you believe men are the answer to this?
Well, I think that we can see that we've been fighting for 53 years with one hand tied behind our back, right? It's 90% women in the pro-life movement, and we can't win this fight with one hand tied behind our back.
That's a good point. Okay, we're gonna finish that thought when we come back. Why are men the key to ending abortion in a single generation? We're talking with Sean Corcoran here today with Men for Life. We're going to continue this conversation after the break. Don't go away. We're talking about Men for Life with our guest here on Catholic Connection, Sean Corcoran, with us. And before we went to break, Sean, we were talking about why do you believe men are the key to ending abortion in a single generation? So we kind of want to continue that thought.
Yeah, and I do. And I think that that's a really important statement. I believe that we can end abortion in a single generation, but we cannot do it with one hand tied behind our back, right? We cannot do it if the men who are the leaders of their home are not leading on this issue. And I think that the problem is that for the 53 years while the abortion industry and those supporters were saying, hey, men, sit down, shut up, your voice is not important, right? Like, you have no right to talk about this. The pro-life movement was so hyper-focused on women and babies, as they should be, that the men just kind of, while we can acknowledge that this is not a woman's issue, that abortion is about the killing of innocent human beings, we've allowed it to become a women's fight, right? And if we have consigned ourselves to just show up to fundraisers and write checks to fund a spiritual war that we send our women off to fight, again, we're failing in our masculinity. Like, we are designed to lead. And so I think that it's the lack of leadership of men that has allowed abortion to persist as long as it has. So the response to that would be that bringing men into the fight to lead alongside the strong women who have been leading is the answer to the one thing that we haven't had for for the last 53 years. And that leadership doesn't just start, within the pro-life movement, right? It starts with how we shape our children, how we shape the next generation, how we mentor all these young men who come from fatherless homes and don't know what it means to be a man. So they're living this self-serving vision of masculinity, like Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan, who were both arrested 2 days ago for, rape and child trafficking human trafficking and things like that. Like, that's not who we should be following. But we need good men to be setting the example in order for these young men to see that. And, and I want to point out something that's fascinating that just came across my desk last week. And that is, there is a group called Men for Choice. Okay. And these are young men, maybe in their 30s, from what I can see on all their social media, who have been around since about 2019, but had no traction until this year. Somebody has given them a lot of money. Somebody who has before, the abortion industry saying men don't have a voice, their voice isn't important, they shouldn't talk about this, has recognized that we have to acknowledge the power that men's voices have to end abortion, and we have to get in front of that. So Men for Choice is now well-funded and is going on college campuses with the mission to train the next generation of men on how to be pro-abortion, right? So now the abortion industry recognizes that men's voices can sway this fight one way or another, and they're trying to take it over. And if we in the pro-life movement aren't meeting that head on, we can't just look at it, even though these guys are goofy. If you watch their videos, these are not men who you would think are masculine leaders, right? Mm-hmm. But they're still doing it, and they're still influencing. And there's people signing up for these trainings, college men signing up for these trainings and showing up to these classes and taking all these pamphlets and all this information so that they can go out and do pro-abortion apologetics, so to speak. Mm-hmm. If we're not raising up an army of good men at the same time in the face of that, then we will lose. And it won't be that we lose because we're wrong. It will be we lose because we're being passive. We'll lose because we're being silent.
Yeah.
We'll lose because we're not taking action. And that's really the heart of the message for Men for Life is, silence and passivity is failing us in so many places,
Yeah.
But the good news is that young men in that 18 to 29-year-old age group are fed up. There was a poll from last year that asked 18 to 29-year-olds to rank the in order of the highest to lowest indicator of success, 13 categories. Young men, conservative men, ranked children as the number one indicator of success.
Wow.
That is an amazing sign. Young conservative women, it was 4. Young liberal men, it was like 6 or 10. And young liberal women, it was 12, like dead last except for social media influencer. So young conservative men view children as the number one indicator of success. Well, how do we foster that in them, right? How do we continue to meet that while it's there and while it's hot, and help them to understand that, yeah, they're right. Like traditional family values, that's where it's at. Life, family, faith. Like that is, but if we as good men in our generations aren't there to meet them, then they're going to find it somewhere else.
Yeah.
And, and people will say, yeah, but this next generation is exceedingly liberal. And the truth is, if you look at that same age group from 2020 to 2024, there was a 7% shift among those young men from the left to the right. They're becoming more conservative. They're leaving the lies and seeking the truth. And when you're leaving the lies and seeking the truth starts in the Word, right? And then you look at this year, there's a poll in that same age group. 42% of young men in that age group say that church and religion is important in their lives. That is 14% higher than last year.
Wow,
So,
that's significant in a year's time.
Yes. So there's tremendous momentum right now. And this is the time. And I think that's why the fear in the pro-abortion side comes in, and they want to say, hey, we got to head this off. We got to dump some money into meeting these kids on campus and get ahead of this, because they're moving away. Like what we've been fighting for so long hasn't worked. They're no longer willing to be silent. They want to speak out. So let's get them to speak out on our side. And we on the side of God, and we on the side of right and pro-life and anti-abortion, we have to be there too. And so that's a next step for Men for Life, is being on campuses. And I spoke, and I think this is really important, I spoke to Students for Life at the National Leaders Collective a couple weeks ago. And this is what's crazy, Vanessa. Last year at their conference, there was 150 students and 15 of them were men. Okay. This year, there was 150 students and 50 of them. 50 of their fellows were men.
It's just growing up. Wow.
And so I spoke in front of 50 men on what does it mean to be a masculine leader. And they were on fire for it. But what was really telling is that these young men, who most of whom had a good upbringing, they're on the side of right, they know what their direction is in life. They lined up afterwards to ask the exact same question over and over. What books can I read? How can I learn more about how to be a good man, how to improve as a man, about biblical masculinity? Like, how can I find that and foster that in myself? So these young men who, in most cases have a dad, right? And were raised in two-parent homes and were raised with good values. And that's why they're in this fellowship, are still hungry for this. Imagine the hunger that exists in those young men that are coming into the pregnancy centers who in most cases didn't have a dad, or had a bad dad, or an abusive dad, or an absent dad, and didn't have that formation in masculinity. And they might not even know what that hunger is. But those are the guys that are turning to people like Andrew Tate. Right. Those are the guys who are seeing strength and domination as the tools of masculinity, instead of using your strength to serve others, which is how God designed us.
Yeah. Sean, I was thinking when you're talking about the Men for Choice on the college campuses, it's such a contradiction of their whole campaign of my body, my choice. I mean, how do they justify men out there when the whole women's campaign on abortion is my body, my choice, that the men don't have a say anyway? It's just, it doesn't make any sense, But
it's never been about choice. It's always been pro-abortion.
No, it's never been about choice. It's always, that's why they want to educate women on what really goes on in abortion.
Yeah, like they're not educating these men on how to support a woman's choice for either abortion or life. They're educating these men on how to talk and speak out against people who are pro-life, right? Which means the opposite of pro-life is pro-abortion.
Yeah.
And so like they're training these men, like they get it. They see that what they were doing isn't going to work for the next 10 years. And so they're training men, and we need to be training men too. And so, I would encourage anyone who's listening to go to our website, menforlife.org. There's a giant button on there that says Enter the Arena. You can sign up for our email lists and get information about what we're doing, how we're going to be training the next generation, some pro-life apologetics for men and women as well. But just so that people can start to dig into how do I speak confidently and competently so that I can be bold on this issue, because I think that that's really important.
So are you going to have a separate training for young men on college campuses? Are you going that route?
I believe that is where we are headed. And I think that, that is something that is in my head right now just because of what I saw last week with Men for Choice. It was sent to me by a dozen people. And I dove into it as much as I had time to figure out who are these people, where did they come from, why are they all of a sudden having all this traction, and they had no money last year. And
so somebody's funneling them,
yes.
funding them, and they saw the threat of what's really going on their side. A few years ago, Sean, I wrote a story in the Chaldean News, which I owned at one time. I launched the magazine. I owned it for 16 years, and I remember doing a story on abortion on the rise in the Chaldean community. We're Christians from Iraq here in the Detroit area, and I interviewed this young man who got his girlfriend pregnant, and she wanted to have an abortion. He begged her not to abort the baby. He said, I will take the baby, I will raise the baby, please don't do this, and you don't have to have anything to do with the baby. And by the grace of God, he convinced her to have the baby. And he was like 19 years old, and he's been raising the baby with his parents since. And I remember he was telling me a story how he went to church and with the baby, he was like 20 at the time, I think, when they had the baby, and somebody said, oh, you shouldn't be in church, with this baby, or, this is a disgrace. And he went crying to then a priest who's now a bishop, and he told the bishop, the priest, what happened. And the priest says, not only will you enter church with that baby, you're going to sit at the first seat. You're going to sit right at the front row.
Yeah.
And it was so powerful. I'll never forget that. And I thought, what an amazing kid, 19 years old, begging his girlfriend not to abort his baby.
I love that. And I love that it was successful. My story is very similar, and I lost. And that led me to fail out of college 3 times, a 7-year methamphetamine addiction, homelessness, unemployment, and overdosing in a hotel room before God led me out. Helped me to make the connections between the complete emasculation that I felt as a 19-year-old young man from being powerless to protect my own child from being killed.
Wow.
And all of the behavior that came after that. And I was led then back to college and to law school to marry an amazing woman, to start a beautiful family, to have a great career, and all of that, I believe, led me to this point that I'm at today.
Wow.
Because this isn't where I wanted to be. Right?
Yeah. God bless you.
So when the threats come, I have no problem saying your threats are worthless. I didn't want to be here anyway. You're not going to be able to dissuade me from doing this. But to your point, though, with that young man, there's a study that shows that 80% of post-abortive couples in this study didn't talk about it before. And because they didn't talk about it, the woman assumed that the man wanted an abortion. The man didn't talk about it because he didn't think he had a place to be allowed to speak about it, because that's what we're told, right?
Yeah.
And what the 80% of those couples said was that each of them wanted the baby in the beginning.
Oh, that's so heartbreaking.
So men have to speak.
Well, thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for sharing this ministry. God bless you and all that you do, Sean. Thanks for being with us here today.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Sean Corcoran with us. Men for Life. Go to the website, find out more. We're going to wrap up here. Catholic Connection on a Tuesday. Don't go away. We're wrapping up here on a Tuesday. Vanessa Denhagarmo filling in for my dear sister in Christ, Teresa Tomeo. She will be back in her host chair tomorrow. Happy to report with live action update with Kimberly Bird. Shrines and Wonders Wednesday with Teresa Tomeo. Jones, Rome, and Vatican News with Joan Lewis. And then in EWTN Radio Extra, Lewis Brown, Executive Director of Christ Medicus Foundation, will be with Teresa tomorrow as well. And I want to thank Sean Corcoran for being with us here today from Men of Life. And what an amazing story. I wish I had more time. He shared with us at the last part of that interview his own personal story and what he went through. I had no idea his background. And I would love to talk to him more about that. But he has an amazing ministry, Men for Life, something that he truly followed the God's will for him to become the executive director, the CEO for Men for Life after leaving his law practice, really listening to God, right? Listening to God, and who put this on his heart to take over. And he's doing amazing work and helping men understand that they have a voice in the pro-life movement, and guiding men into doing that, standing up and speaking out against abortion. So thank you so much, Sean, for being with us. And thank you all for tuning in. As always, I like to remind my listeners to always be connecting, communicating, and collaborating with your Catholic community. Don't go away. There's more to enjoy here on EWTN.